What is a circular economy and how should we define it? Very short. Then, if you want to integrate the circular economy into the public procurement cycle, we have to take a look at the public procurement legislation, the principles and its legislation. And then we end with the most interesting question of all: how should we integrate circular economy practices into the public procurement cycle? But first, circular economy, what is it? The circular economy is an umbrella term, which means that it connects different concepts and ideas that were previously unrelated. It is a moving picture of Klaus with an umbrella from Umbrella Academy. So it's a double reference. The fact that an umbrella term connects concepts and ideas, it connects it within a similar characteristic. So when we take a look at the circular economy, we can clearly see that it is an umbrella term because there are various underlying ideas and theories: cradle to cradle, biomimicry, natural capitalism. What is a similar characteristic here? Well, they all try to prolong the lifespan of materials and resources in order to create value and avoid unnecessary value losses. That is a common characteristic. That is what the circular economy is all about. Now, the fun thing about circular economy being an umbrella term is not that I can use pictures of Umbrella Academy, but that umbrella terms all have a similar path of development. So every umbrella term that you know has the same path of development. We start off with a lot of excitement. Wow, a circular economy. Amazing. Never heard about it. I'm enthusiastic. But then people start to ask questions. How should we define a circular economy? How should we monitor the transition to a circular economy? We don't know. And then scholars, experts like you, come into vision and you start doing research, further works on the transition to a circular economy. And there are three possible outcomes. We get a coherent concept, we get a contested concept, or we get a collapsed concept. Of course, you want to avoid the concept from collapsing, because I'm writing a PhD on circular economy, and if the concept would collapse, my PhD would not have any value at all. So a lot of work to be done. Many others suggest that we are now in the validity challenge period. I think that they're right, but we're progressing towards the further work stage, I would say. Now, there are three possible outcomes. So one of the possible outcomes is that circular economy is an essentially contested concept, a contested concept. And the theory of essentially contested concepts was developed by W.B. Galli in 1956. And he said, well, there are 7 conditions that have to be fulfilled in order for a concept to be essentially contested. Some examples of essentially contested concepts: art and democracy. Because we can have a debate about art or democracy, and there will be different views about it. We can argue about it. We can argue about it until the evening, maybe the night, but there will be no principle to decide who is right or who is not. If those 7 conditions are fulfilled, then circular economy would be an essentially contested concept. And that would be a problem because it will be impossible to define it then. Because there will be a constant debate. There is no principle to decide who is right and who is wrong. So I hope it is not essentially contested. And in my opinion, it is not. I think that the 5th condition is problematic, the reciprocal recognition. The 5th condition means that when we are arguing about a concept, we are using our arguments both in an aggressive and in a defensive way. So, for example, these are 2 beautiful pieces of art. Who of you thinks that this one is the most beautiful? You can go and visit it in Antwerp. I see some hands, yeah? Who thinks that this one is the most beautiful? The other ones have no opinion or are not awake yet? No? Ah yeah, but this is the Dulle Griet from Breugel. Eh? It is an amazing work, eh? Especially if you say it like. But my point is clear. We all have a different opinion. Some of you say, this painting is beautiful because it is, wow. And others say, no, this one because it has all the details and I don't know where to look at. And we will argue about it. We will use arguments, both aggressively and defensively. For a circular economy, that is not the case. We are not contesting our views. We are merely highlighting different aspects of the same coin. When someone says circular economy is all about reuse or more about closed loop recycling, they are right. If another person says, no, I think it is about, when we think about the construction sector, building it modular, building it in a modular way, they are right as well. It is about business models, new business models, products as a service. They are right. But we are highlighting different aspects of the same coin. We're not contesting those views. And that makes the circular economy, in my opinion, not an essentially contested concept, but at this point, a essentially confused concept. We are focused on different aspects and we don't know what the overarching idea is. And it stopped working again. But I will click until it works. Yes. So it is not an essentially contested concept. Wow, good news. Perfect. So now we can define a circular economy. What are the core elements of a circular economy? Luckily, we do not have to do all the work because someone else might do it for us. And Kircher already did that in 2017. He's a researcher from the University of Utrecht. And he examined 114 different definitions of a circular economy and came up with these core elements. It is a paradigm shift. He uses the 4R framework, which I think is good. All stakeholders of our society should be involved. It is a pathway to sustainability, one possible pathway to sustainability, not the pathway to sustainability. And it also has a time dimension, which is very important in my opinion. So that brings me to this definition. It is a very broad definition, which I think is necessary because we cannot pinpoint any techniques or any different uses, ideas that we might have because we do not know what the future will hold. We have to keep it broad because if we pinpoint several techniques right now, we might get into trouble later on. So it's a very broad definition and everyone who is working on a circular economy could say, well, I'm focusing on that specific aspect of the circular economy right now, but I'm focusing on the umbrella term, the umbrella of the circular economy with this broad definition. And I think it could be a pathway, it could help us going into the right direction. Now that we know what a circular economy is, we have to take a look at the public procurement legislation because we want to integrate the circular economy into it. Now, I probably do not have to tell you it, but I will do it anyway, that there are various principles that are guiding the public procurement legislation: equality, transparency, proportionality. Some various examples, for example, the example of the European Court of Justice of the 22nd of June, 1993, only 2 days after I was born. So it must be an amazing case. It was about negotiating with an economic operator that was not in conformity with the tender documents. And the other economic operator said, well, we are doing a lot of effort to conform with your needs, with your wants, contracting authority, and now you're negotiating with someone who doesn't fulfill the conditions of the tender documents. This is in violation of the equality principle. And the court said, yes, you are right. Another, for example, the proportionality. I will not bore you with all the case law. Proportionality was all about connected economic operators. The contracting authority said, well, if you're connected, then you cannot be a part of our tender. You cannot have separate offers. Not possible whatsoever. The Court of Justice said, well, that is a bit disproportionate. You should look at it. Is it a close cooperation? Is it a strong cooperation? Yes or no? And base your decision on that. So you have to be proportionate when you take a decision. Good morning, Aura. The goal of all those principles is competition. We want to establish competition, and we also have to take into account the principles of the internal market. Free movement of goods, free movement of everyone. Now, there is legislation. I think the most important one is a directive 2014-24. There is also the 2014-25, but I'll focus on the 2014-24. There are various guidelines, of course, and they are implemented on the national level. But since most of you are not from Belgium, I will not bore you with the Belgian legislation. Although it is very interesting. Now, and it's a bit of a spoiler for my last slide, but I will say it anyway. The legislation on public procurement is not a problem when we try to implement circular economy in the public procurement cycle. So that's good news. You can be very enthusiastic about it. It's not a problem. The problem is that nowadays contracting authorities are still not aware of how they should implement circular economy in the public procurement cycle. So the legislation gives us various possibilities. We can look at technical specifications, selection criteria, award criteria, or even contract clauses in order to integrate circular economy aspects into the cycle. And it depends all on the project, on the ambition of the contracting authority, where you should put the circular economy aspect. It is difficult to do so, but the legislation gives you those tools. They all influence each other. When something is a technical specification, maybe it's better to put it as an award criteria, maybe even to postpone it to the execution of the contract. So you make it a contract clause. They all influence each other, and they depend on the ambition of the contracting authority and should be linked to the subject matter of the contract. That particular line, linked to the subject matter of the contract, you will dream it after this presentation, because I will repeat it a lot. Now, technical specifications, very short. Technical specifications, we talked about the paintings. With a technical specification, you go from a draft, from an idea, to your painting, to something very concrete, something that is there, something that you want. The specifications are the must-haves. So every economic operator who is interested in doing an offer, in presenting an offer, should comply with the technical specifications. It's important to take into account when we want to include circularity. Now, the legislation mentions that we should, or that environmental and social criteria are allowed, so everything is fine there. However, there are limits. One of the limits is that it should be linked to the subject matter, of course, and it cannot be about the general corporate policy of the economic operators. Now, that's very vague. When is something linked to the project and when is about the general corporate policy? That's not really clear. Where is the line? Well, our Council of State here in Belgium said that there should be a link with specific actions within the scope of the project. If that is the case, then you're fine. Then it's okay. Of course, there are limits, but we should take into account that our contracting authorities have a margin of appreciation. They can do a lot is allowed, so we should always take that into account. Then the selection criteria, I think they're the least interesting, with the exception of the technical and professional ability, because it gives contracting authorities the opportunity to ask about references concerning circular economy practices or the use of certain tools, for example, life cycle costing. If you have any experience with it, you can ask for it. So that's something to consider, but of course it should be linked to the subject matter as well. And then the award criteria, there is an amazing book, but it's in Dutch. So for you, it will probably be very difficult to read. But there was a quote in it, in English, luckily, about an astronaut. And I will read it to you because I think it's an amazing quote. I guess the question I'm asked the most often is, when you were sitting in that capsule, listening to the countdown, how did you feel? Well, the answer to that one is easy. I felt exactly how you would feel if you were getting ready to launch and knew you were sitting on top of 2 million parts, all built by the lowest bidder on a government contract. Yes. It speaks for itself. But the legislation gives us more possibilities than solely price. There are 3 to be exact. You have price, of course. You can also take a look at life cycle costing if you want. If you have an expert, you can ask them, do me some life cycle costing. Or the best price quality ratio. Now, in the Netherlands, just a sidestep, there is a motivation duty. So they say, in general, you have to use best price quality ratio. If you want to use life cycle costing or solely the price, you have to motivate it. There has been some critique on it in the Netherlands, since life cycle costing is also very sustainable if you can do it. But more about that on the next slide. Technical specifications were must-haves, things that everyone has to comply to. Award criteria are nice-to-haves. It gives economic operators the chance to shine bright like a diamond, and get the offer, get the project, and are able to do the project. Of course, there are some conditions. It should be linked to the subject matter. Linked to the subject matter, you will dream it. And transparency is also very important. For example, there was a case before the Council of State here in Belgium, and the contracting authority talked about a processing site. Now, there were 2 offers, and the contracting authority managed to interpret processing sites for those 2 offers in 2 completely different ways. So the one who didn't get it went to the Council of State, says, well, do they even know what a processing site is? And the Council of State said, no, apparently they did not know what it was, and it was not transparent. As a contracting authority, you should know what a processing site is if you put it in your tender documents. So be transparent, be clear. In fact, when we talk about the 3 possible methods to award a project, life cycle costing, in fact, would be the most interesting, as life cycle costing already includes environmental aspect, sustainable aspect. It looks at the total cost of ownership. Well, when you use best price quality ratio, you as a contracting authority have to choose to implement environmental or sustainable criteria. So life cycle costing would be the best. And I remember you about the Netherlands, where they have a motivation duty to use life cycle costing. So of course, the critique on that is valid, I would say. Unfortunately, but we are working on it, I would say, there are no real or good methods yet to calculate the whole life cycle. You can use internal effects, or you can calculate internal effects and the external effects, but it's very difficult to put them together into one number, which makes it easy for contracting authorities to rank them or to give scores to them. Now, when we talk about awarding a contract, they will mostly award them to the most economically advantageous tender. The word economic is in it. So does that mean that environmental criteria are not allowed? Luckily for us, no, they are allowed. It was also explicitly mentioned in the case Concordia Bus of the Court of Justice. Interesting one to see that they influence each other, that they work together. Technical specifications can be an award criteria as well. So you can say, in my technical specifications, I want this. This is the bar that everyone has to go over. If you go further, shine bright like a diamond, then you get more points and you can get the offer, you can get the project. So it's something that we can think about. It can be very interesting from a circular point of view. Then the contract clauses. It's always a bit weird to talk about the contract clauses because it's about a whole different aspect of a project. It's when the tender is over. It's when you're executing the contract. So it's always very weird. There's not a lot about contract clauses in the directive. It's Article 70 of the directive, and it's mostly regulated on the national level. So here in Belgium, we have the Royal Decree of 2013 with some general provisions, but you can deviate from it. You can put exceptions on it. And of course, you can always design special contract clauses, something that is related to the circular economy, for example, as long as it has a link with the subject matter, of course. And of course, the principles and all of that still apply. Now, third question, how should we integrate circular economy into the public procurement cycle? Next, so keep your smartphones ready already because very soon you will need them. I looked for some examples to show you that it can be very difficult to use all those criteria, clauses, and everything together, but it also provides a lot of opportunities. So we have, for example, the Sanresa case, which was a preliminary ruling. We're taking a picture. Was I in the way? No? Okay. So it was a tender for a contract for hazardous waste management services. And the first question that was asked was, normally, if you want to ship waste from one member state to another, you need to have consent. And here, of the member state. And here, the contracting authority said, well, you should prove to me when you are doing the offer that you have the consent. Economic operators said, well, that is not possible. It is something that is related to the execution of the contract. It is a contract clause. I should prove it when the offer is awarded to me and not when I'm submitting an offer, because it's not possible. It takes a lot of work. I do not have all the information yet, etc. So they asked the question, and the court, the European Court of Justice, said it is a contract clause. So you only have to prove it once the project is awarded to you. But you see, it is very difficult. Well, it is on the slide, so you already read it. But if I would ask you the question, it is very difficult to determine if it is a contract clause or not. It is something to consider. It is something to think about. The other one, from September 2021, is even more interesting and also a bit more abstract. So here it was also about waste. It was about the provision of services relating to the collection and transport of municipal waste from a municipality to another. And in the tender documents was a specification that the vehicles that they would use should be of Euronorm 5 and should have a GPS system installed. And then the question was, can we use that specification, so Euronorm 5 and GPS, as a technical specification, selection criteria, and contract clause at the same time? And the court said, yes. Why not? If it fulfills all the criteria, all the conditions linked to the subject matter, etc., then it could be possible that that specification is a technical specification, selection criterion, and a contract clause at the same time. Yes, I mean that. Yeah, relating to the execution of the contract. Yeah. So I think that is very interesting. And I'm still thinking about the possible implications about it. We can always discuss it later. But it's a pretty abstract ruling, but I see a lot of opportunity there. Maybe, yeah, I don't know it yet, but maybe you could say in the technical specification, you have to apply to this, and then work it out further in the contract performance clauses. It's something to think about. It is there. Read it. It's available in all the languages. Read it. Send me an email, and we will discuss it. Now, to round it all up, smartphones ready? It will be on the next slide. How to choose when you want to integrate circular economy into the public procurement cycle, how should you choose? It all depends on the ambition of the contracting authority. And I would suggest contracting authorities to keep their ambitions rather small at the beginning and progress through time. You should not focus on reuse, modular building, for example, everything as a service. It is too much. You don't know how to put all those things into the tender or the tender documents. It is difficult. Focus on reusing materials or the use of recycled content, for example, and do that for the best you can. Preparation will also be more important when we talk about circular economy practices. Preliminary market consultations. If you want to know what the market has to offer, you have to check the market. If there are a lot of solutions available, you can put it in the technical specifications because a lot of them can comply or fulfill those conditions. If there are not that many people who have the solutions you want, you can put it in the award criteria. Give people the chance to pass the bar of the technical specifications, goal competition, and then put it in the award criteria so circular companies can shine bright like a diamond. Trust and cooperation is also something that is more important nowadays, or when we talk about circular economy, since we are closing projects for the long run. Now the maintenance is probably also included, so we have contracts of 15, 20, maybe 25 years. You need trust and cooperation between contractors, between economic operators and the contracting authority, because otherwise things will go wrong. Things will always go wrong. That's why we are lawyers, or you need lawyers. Things will go wrong, of course. But trust and cooperation is a new mindset that we should embrace in the circular economy. Now look at the definition. Circular economy is a paradigm shift. Of course, things will also depend on the choice of procedure. When you talk about a competitive dialogue, there are no very strict technical specifications in the beginning. You discuss it with the market, and then you come up with your provisions, your specifications, criteria, etc. So it also depends on that. Also think about the workload of economic operators, because the goal is competition, but when you put a lot of specifications, when you ask for a lot to the market, then people will say, well, I have to put a lot of time, a lot of money in making an offer I'm not sure that will lead me to the project, so I will not submit an offer at all. And that will lead to a disruption of competition. So make sure that you also take the workload of economic operators into account. And of course, keep the principles in mind. Now, we talked about technical specifications, award criteria, selection criteria, contract performance clauses, but of course, the legislation also gives a lot of other options. For example, the use of variance. There are other possibilities, but that's one that is mentioned a lot in literature. And as I said in the beginning, it was a spoiler for the last slide. Legislation is not the problem. But now, the moment you have all been waiting for, oh, it doesn't work. That would be not nice if it doesn't work, but I can make it work. Let's see. Yes. I just had to click on the little cross. So, use your smartphones, use your laptops. We're going on an interactive journey. Go to polf.com. It's the best that you do that. Press enter. And then you should use the code. It is not here, but I will say it to you. Jonas Voorter 599. I repeat, Jonas Voorter, Voorter, 599. And then you can submit your name normally. And the first question should pop up. Does that work? 599. I repeat, 599. Really? Yes? Yeah, it says so. Huh? Let me check again. We still have some time. It is probably because I am not using my own laptop and they don't know who I am or what am I doing. So it seems that it does not work. It works. So you see the first question. Wow. You are, yes, I see the answers. Ah, perfect. Wait, I'll do it like this, but you will not see the answers now on the screen. But this was the first question. Maybe can you just use your hands and I can see the answers on my screen as well. Which criteria are most relevant or efficient when integrating circular aspects in public procurement practices? I see that a lot of you said technical specifications. Who gave an answer and want to say something about it? Yes. Okay, why? Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay. So it's a bit on both ends. I would say that it is indeed interesting to talk about contract performance clause because it shifts the load towards the performance of the contract. Yes. Yeah. Ah, yes. Yeah. 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 That could work as well. Yeah. 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 The nice to haves. Yeah, yeah. I think that really depends on what the market has to offer. Indeed, if there are a lot of solutions available, or you see that the market is also already able to do it, you could put it in the technical specifications, I would say. Is your hand? Yeah. Yes. Of course. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not that good in asking clear questions. I always like debate. So yeah. Maybe the last one before we go to the next one. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the input. Maybe another question. Can contracting authorities ask for a specific kind of beer in their tenders? I am from Belgium, so I have my favorite beer. It is La Chouffe. It's with a little gnome on the bottle, so you should try it out. They have various kinds. The blonde one is very good. The brown one is good. They're all very good. So can I ask, as a contracting authority, to give me La Chouffe? A lot of them said yes. Ah, yes. Yes, you see, I am not that good at asking clear questions. But if I want to ask to put La Chouffe, to give me La Chouffe? No. Okay. You all agree that it's no? Maybe. Why maybe? Why do I need it? Because it's delicious. Ah, yes, yes. I know what you refer to. Yes, yes, yes. It is. Yeah. The kind beer. You want blonde beer? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Ah, yes, yes, yes. It is actually based on a real case. It's not on the screen anymore, but it doesn't matter. It is based on a real case before the Council of State, where one of the contracting authorities says we want Stella Artois, we want those types of beers, and another one, not La Chouffe, said, but we want to provide other beers who have the same quality. And then the Council of State had to say, well, are they as good? Are they equal? And then they said, well, the contracting authority has asked in their technical specifications for a specific kind or type of beer, Stella Artois, and that is not allowed unless, and that's where you are totally right, you can motivate it in a particular way. There are some exceptions to it, but so maybe would be, I think, the best answer. But if you're only talking about types of beers like blonde, brown, but here in Belgium, we only talk about brands, Duvel, La Chouffe, etc. La Chouffe, you should try it. It's amazing. And then the third, and then I have to stop. It was with all the smiley faces. I don't know if people saw it. If not, it doesn't matter. No, that is unavailable. Here. Now, I said that in circular economy, it's all about more about trust, cooperation, things like that. So should we focus more on integrated contracts? TBFM, PPP. Professor Van Garst is an expert on PPP. So the question is highly relevant for you. Who thinks this one? I will just move. Raise your hands if I. Oh. Okay. Oh, I'm already here. Okay. So most of you say, yes, it is a good idea to focus more on integrated contracts. Why? it is also related to the question about life cycle costing, total cost of ownership. It's longer duration. We focus on the longer term. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Then I really want to thank you for your participation. It didn't really work out the way it should, but still we had a lot of interactivity. I hope you thought it was interesting and not boring at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, because Tuesday is the most stupid day of the week. So if you have any further questions, if you want to discuss it with me, you can use this email address and I will respond. But for now, I wish you a very interesting day. Thank you.
No. Thank you, Jonas. Very, very interesting. Well, Stephen, I must admit I'm jealous of your PhD students if they are all like this one. Oh my God. As you can confirm, okay. So, yeah, with that in mind, of course, we have also common students. So I'm not that jealous because maybe they are all that good. So this is it's a very good start of the presentations. A very hard act to follow, I think. But on the other hand, I think Melody, it's up to the task, to the challenge. So please amaze us with another great presentation on Green Deal circular, yeah, buying circular. Melody, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. And indeed, it's quite a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. I'll try to share my presentation. I hope you will be able to see it in the room. Can you please confirm that you can see my slides? Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, now we hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So for starters, I think I might say that I'm not a lawyer. I'm an environmental biologist by training. So my focus will be a little different than the previous one. And indeed, I was asked to tell you a little bit about our Flemish Green Deal on circular procurement. I work for an organization called Circular Flanders, and I'll give you a little information on that as well. So as you might have noticed, Flanders is quite a small region in Europe. It's quite densely inhabited. We have over 6 million people here. And we also have our own government. And so this government has decided that circular economy is one of the 7 transition priorities. So this is quite nice. This is quite a good position to be in. And currently there are 2 secretaries that are responsible for this circular economy transition. So it's the one that is responsible for the environment and another one that is responsible for economy. And so Circular Flanders, the organization I work for, is supposed to be the hub of this circular transition within our region. And quite recently, we've adopted a new governance structure, and so it's quite complicated, so I will only touch upon it briefly. But the idea is that we use 6 thematic agendas to work on. So you can see them here. There are various topics that we will focus on. For instance, circular construction is one of them. And then there are also strategic levers that we use to move these agendas forward. And circular procurement is one of these levers that is deemed important to facilitate the transition to a more circular economy. And so the question is basically, why should we focus on circular procurement? Well, as you probably know, over 14% of the European GDP is spent in public procurement. So it's really a huge amount of money. And this money can be used to create a positive impact. Then on the other hand, we also believe that creating the demand in the market facilitates the innovation and the transition. So that is really 2 important reasons why we should focus on circular procurement. So as promised, I'll tell you a little more about the Green Deal on circular procurement we had in Flanders. This Green Deal took place from 2017 until 2019. And as Dr. Anders Voorder already mentioned, it's quite important to have a joint definition or have a common language. So in the very beginning of this Green Deal, we started with quite a large group of people to discuss this joint definition that we would use for the Green Deal on circular procurement. And as you can see, it's important to focus on the ecological, the social, as well as the economic, and also to look at the functional needs for procurement. And so basically what Dr. Anders Voorder has also explained, that it's really important to close the loop and maximize the retention of value. So these are a few images from our Green Deal. As you can see on the right top side, this is where the Green Deal got signed. But we had various activities throughout this Green Deal. So we had inspiration and action days where we brought the people together. We had B2B matchmaking. We had market dialogues where we had the suppliers on one hand side of the table and the procurers on the other hand. We had circular procurer markets where suppliers could show their offering to the procurers, so buyer meets supplier events. And so all of the information that we gained from these is now shared on the Circular Procurement website, you can see below, and it's also in English, so I would really advise you to take a look there. And we also have quite a large LinkedIn group that is also international, so where people can post any questions that they have or interesting information that they would like to share. So this Green Deal on circular procurement had over 150 participants, and a large part of it were buyers. And as you can see, they were from governments as well as from companies. And another part were facilitators. So these buyers engaged themselves to do at least 2 circular procurement experiments within the Green Deal. And the facilitators engaged themselves to do at least 1 action to help these buyers. So for instance, one of the facilitators looked into how as a service models can be financed. As you can see on the slide here, we had a lot of different topics. Obviously, there are a lot of product groups that need to be procured, but it's quite interesting to have so many different ones because this allowed us to gain knowledge for all these different product groups you see here. And this is a slide I kindly borrowed from Mervyn Jones. And it's really sort of to show where most impact is created. As you can see below, this is the procurement journey, and it's really important to put focus on the beginning phase. So basically we could say that the circular procurement journey is not that different from a linear one, but you would need more time put to the preparatory phase. So this is something that's really important to take into account, that procurers also get this time, and that they're not facing deadlines to renew contracts, because they have to really put in the time in this phase. And so within the Green Deal, we had a few instruments that were created to help procurers. And the first one is really basically a very easy quiz that people can take to see whether or not their procurement project would be suitable as a pilot for circular procurement. So basically a quick assessment to see if this would be a good place to start. Another one is our circular ambition chart. It's been translated into a lot of languages already, amongst which Swedish. So it's really nice to see that people find it quite handy and that it's put to use. So the way this works is that on top you have the letters, and these are the goals you could strive for in your circularity. So Dr. Hans Forter also mentioned that it's not really useful in the beginning to strive for everything and to try to do things perfect. Now we say, okay, it's better to focus on one of these goals, and perhaps you want to extend the useful lifetime of the laptops you have in your organization. Okay, then just focus on that one in the beginning, and later on you can expand. And then the numbers you see below are then the strategies you can use to achieve those goals. So obviously it's wise to choose a few strategies to try to achieve your goal. And so this sort of relates back to the fact that it's really important to set your ambitions. It's important to set your ambitions within your organization so that everyone knows what you're striving for, what you're talking about, also linking back to the joint definition. But this is also a means that you can use to communicate with your potential suppliers. So it really states, okay, this is what we're going for, this is what we think is important. Another item that was created, and I am fully aware that this is quite basic because this is a field that is still very much developing, and this is an indicator chart. So for various points, this allows you to make some sort of calculation on what you achieved. So if you put numbers on this in your ambitions in the beginning or in your normal linear contract, put in the details that are in the contract, and then also what is realized in the end, because unfortunately not always what is in the contract is realized. So if you have these three measuring points, then you can see, okay, were my ambitions realistic? Were they executed? What do we have to change next time? So basically the idea is that you get more grasp of what you're doing. But in the project I'll tell you about in a minute, we see that we currently have I think over 95 tools to help people with procurement. A lot of them talk about indicators, and we see that it's really an emerging field. It's really complicated, but so this is a first attempt to have people think about this. So I'll now explain about a few of the cases we have in Flanders, but I know there's speakers coming after me that will go into more detail about specific cases. So just to give you a little idea of what's possible. So the first case is of the Facilities company of the Flemish government. So they have offices all over Flanders, and they wanted to focus on their office furniture and on the reduction of the total amount of materials that are used. So the first thing they did was make an inventory of all the furniture that was available at these different locations, so that they had a library and it was easier for people to ask for furniture to come to their specific office buildings. And they also had a contract with a framework contract with a refurbishing company. So this means that they can give their old furniture to this company, and they have a credit system, so they can also get new furniture from this from this company. And by new, I mean refurbished. So this can either be their own material that is being refurbished or material coming from other locations that they can use. So by doing this, they are really sharing internally, but they're also reducing the amount of materials that has to be used. This is an example of a large Flemish utility company where they use PE piping. And so they wanted to maximize the reuse and the recycling of this piping, but they also wanted to maximize the recycled content of the pipes. And so in their tender, they had an open question. So they asked the supplier to formulate an approach on how to achieve this. And they were quite happy with the results and also quite happy with the with the awarded contract in the end. So this also links back to this partnership with your supplier and this dialogue that can be really important. Excuse me. Then we have lighting as a service. So this is an example of a library in the city of Kortrijk, but we have now many examples in Flanders. This is obviously a service and not a product. And I think it's really important to carefully, critically think about this as a service models, because we see a lot of these coming into function for a lot of different products. But it's really important to know that it's not circular per se. In order to achieve circularity, we need to close the loop. So we really need to know what is happening to these lighting fixtures after they're being taken down. Will they be reused? Will they be recycled? Will the loop be effectively closed? So there's a lot of potential, but it's really important to ask for transparency when procuring these kind of services. Then when we're talking about maximizing the reusability, this is also an example of a Belgian supplier called Facade. So they make facade bricks that can be clicked together using sort of a Lego system. And this is really interesting because in fact they create a material bank, because the stones can be taken back afterwards when the building or the wall is no longer in use. And they used this system to build a psychiatric ward. And they used people with a distance to the labor market to build this. So they trained them to use the system, and then together they created this building. So it's a nice example of the social and the environmental aspects coming together. And then this last example of the recyclability of materials. This is a safety shoe, and this also comes with a materials passport. So they state that it's non-toxic. The parts can easily be taken apart. And what's really interesting is that they have their own reverse logistics system. So in Belgium and the Netherlands, they are able to take back these shoes and create new shoes or new other materials from this, because they know exactly what is in it and how they can reuse it. So that's my short talk about the Green Deal. I would like to touch upon an Interreg project that we're currently a part of that also focuses on circular procurement. So after we finished the Green Deal, in 2019, we joined this Interreg project in the North Sea region that also is focusing on the same topics. In this way, we were able to share what we've learned, but we're also able to learn from our other partners. So as you can see here, these are the partners. They're also public and private organizations that are part of the project. And an important thing, same as we had in the Green Deal and circular procurement, we also have over 30 pilots. So these are people that are actually doing procurements in the field, and we really learn a lot from them. We also have over 18 communities of practice. So these are people that are gathering together. For instance, in Belgium, we have a community of practice on the procurement of circular and fair ICT. And there are various others across the region. And the main goal is to create a circular procurement framework that is common for Europe. Because obviously these procurements are not only limited to a certain region, but also we can really achieve more by doing this together. And in the end, we also try to do some policy recommendations. So here are a few examples of these pilots. And so the general aim is that they are trying to achieve reduction in carbon emissions, reduction in the use of virgin material, and reduction in the creation of waste. Another thing we're doing, and I touched upon this earlier, is we're trying to create a toolbox to help these people with their circular procurement. We're trying to make minimum circular requirements also, so every step of the procurement journey to help these people, because there is really a lot out there already, but we have to make it more easily accessible. And we're also part of the European Circular Economy Stakeholder Platform Leadership Group on Circular Procurement. And so, for instance, recently we had a EU circular talk on whether or not these GPP criteria, these circular criteria, should be mandatory. So in the end, a few takeaways, and I think Dr. Ansvorter already touched upon this as well. It's really important to know that your supplier is not the enemy. So indeed, it is possible, if you already have a contract, to talk to these people and to see maybe they have ambitions of their own, or they're willing to listen to yours and see what you can achieve together within your existing contract. Or if you're launching a tender, it's important to have a request for information, because I sometimes get calls from suppliers that are disappointed and they say, okay, I can achieve this much percentage of recycled content, and they ask me for a lot less. So you can know these things in advance by talking to them. You can have a market dialogue and see how you can stimulate innovation by what to ask or what not to ask. Because obviously these suppliers know best what is possible already. Another important takeaway is the weighting of your criteria. So it could be, if you don't put enough weight on it, it could be that you put in really a lot of effort in making this happen, a lot of time, and in the end it won't matter, because obviously all the other criteria weigh much heavier, and you could end up with a supplier that doesn't take your circular or sustainable criteria into account at all. So it's really important to think about it and to put enough weight on your criteria. Then something that has been mentioned a couple of times now, it's important to communicate your circular ambition. So this circular ambition chart could be a means to do it. There are various other ways, but it's fairly easy to put a clause in your tender or have this in the market dialogue to state, okay, this is important for our organization, this suits our strategy, this suits our mission, this is what we're focusing on. Make it clear, because otherwise they won't know. And then also Dr. Ansvorter mentioned that there are a couple of ways in which to state which is the most advantageous deal. And I believe that success is no longer getting the cheapest deal, because this is only focusing on the price at the procurement itself, but you really have to look at it long term. For instance, just taking into account the total cost of ownership, which takes into account the reparation costs, the maintenance cost, maybe the return. If your product is at end of use, sometimes you can't even get money for it. So it's really important. If you only start to do this, this is a first step, you will see that there can be a vast difference in which product ends up being the cheapest. And this is only looking at the economic factor. If it would be best in the end if we could use LCC, because then we would also take into account the effects on the environment, the social effects, and the EU has some tools that can be used for this. They also state in the European procurement law states that you can use the LCC to calculate the meat. So it's really important that people start doing this because it has benefits for sure. Another thing that's quite important is to take into account SMEs and startups, because often these companies are at the verge of the innovation. They're the ones coming up with new solutions, circular business models. And if you ask for certificates or labels, these can be quite expensive and quite difficult to achieve. Or if you ask for a lot of references, obviously startups won't be able to get them. And I can see from a procure standpoint why you would ask them, because obviously it's easier to verify them, but it would be really a shame to rule them out. So one thing you could do is, for instance, to only ask to provide the certificate once the tender is awarded, so that there would be they would have return on their investment of getting the certificate or the label. Or you could ask for the certificate or the label unless it's an SME or a startup. So really, please really take this into account. Then another thing I touched upon briefly already also is the new role for procurement officers. It's really, I think, throughout the Green Deal and in general, it's not usually a good thing to generalize, but I think in general these people by nature are quite risk averse, and they want to do their job well, and so it can be quite challenging to start doing new things or to start doing things differently. So I think if there is either bottom up or top down, there is an incentive to start working on more circular procurement. We really have to support these people. We really have to give them the time to be able to do it properly. And also, of course, this is not solely the task of the procurement officer anymore. This is the task of the management, the procurement officer, but also the CSR manager, the financial department, the legal department. So it's really important that these people come together, but also the contract manager. It doesn't stop just when the contract is signed. And so this brings me to my last point, that closing the loop is not done on paper. This is sort of a classic example when you buy a very expensive cradle-to-cradle office chair, and then the armrest gets broken and it ends up in landfill. There's nothing circular about it. So it's really important. You can have a really nice tender document, you can have really nice specifications, but it's really important what happens to it during its use and at its end of life. And it's important as well that these end of life solutions and these maintenance solutions and all these other things are really already considered when the tender is written and are already put into the contract wherever possible. And so this way we will probably be able to close the loop, not only in paper, but also in practice. So that was it from me. I would really recommend going to our website on circularprocurement.be and the ProCirc website. And also included is my email address. So please feel free to write me if you have any questions. And I'm also obviously willing to answer if you have anyone now.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Melody.
You're welcome.
And a lot of food for thought. I don't know if we have time now for some questions, Miriam, or we should it's just lectures and we should continue. Maybe 2 questions or 2 remarks, Melody.
I'm not sure if anyone's speaking, but I'm unable to hear you.
Okay, now it's better. Yes, I think it is better. Sorry for that. Well, what I was saying is that at the end of the presentation, you were talking about criteria, developing tools. And my question is whether you think that the EU GPP criteria already developed by the Commission, they really need to be improved, actualized, or strengthened to be really operational and potentially mandatory. Thank you very much.
That's quite an interesting question. Thank you very much. I really feel that the current EU GPP criteria are very of high quality, that they're very useful. And the only, I wouldn't change them. The only thing I think is we need more for more product categories. The point is, where benefits could be reaped is between sort of the EU level and then the person sitting at the office desk trying to write the tender. So these can be inspirational for sure. They can be used, but I think we need training for these procurers in order. It's not just copying the criteria and putting them in a tender. They really need to have a comprehension of what circular procurement is. And so I'm a huge fan of this GPP criteria, but I think we need a step from this EU level down to the practical level where people have to put them into practice. And as far as your question on making them mandatory, we recently had this EU circular talk discussing just this topic, and I can post a link to the recording later on. But we feel that the general tendency is that it would be beneficial to make them mandatory. But of course, then we also would need to give people tools and manuals to make it happen. So I agree, there's a lot of work being done on the EU level, and it could be sensible to make them mandatory.
Thank you. One more question or remark? No? Well then, thank you very much for your presentation. We're going to take a break, 10 minutes. No? 5? Oh, Stephen says 5. Very strict, these guys here at Hasselt. It's like in prison, I don't know why. So 5 minutes break, and then we're going to continue with online presentation.
Okay, so I'm just going to start. Then, okay, my name is Almoed Voer. I'm a consultant for sustainable buildings and I'm working for the Flemish government, Het Facilitair Bedrijf. Our agency is doing project management and facility management for buildings of the Flemish government. That means we are building, maintaining and facilitating a certain amount of buildings in the Flemish government. So what I would like to talk about today is about how you can create impact, because that's what we want to do in the tender documents of public procurement. I think first of all, we have to have a look at where and when and how can we create impact, because there's that's a question you should ask yourself before starting with the project. These are actually the first questions you should consider when talking or creating a project if you plan to put a project in the market. So first, I'm just going to speak a little bit about that and then dig into the building that was mentioned. It's the World Trade Centers in Brussels in the north area. But first of all, to the questions where and when and how do we have impact? We think that we have, as a client, because we put projects in the market, the most impact before we start with the project or at the very beginning of a project, because then we are really thinking about the ambition and the vision of the building. What do we really want? Where do we want to go with that building? Because it's always depending also on the building itself, on the project, how far we can go. But that's the most active phase, we believe, where we can try to challenge the market and really put our mark of create the most impact. From that on, yeah, sorry that the graph is in Dutch, but I didn't have the time to translate it. from that moment on, within the procedure and the design stage and the execution stage, the impact we can create actually gets less and less and less because we are only working on details anymore. But then in the exploitation, it's rising again because we all know that the exploitation phase is a big portion of the life cycle of a building. And if it's well managed, you can realize quite a lot of impact in that phase as well. So in the first phase, when we want to create impact, we have to think about what about ambition. Do we want to challenge the market, or is mainstream okay? Is the normal techniques fine? So we have to try to think about the ambition, be it in general or on a specific topic. This can be on energy, on certification, on certain aspects of circularity of all of these topics as well. One risk is if it's too vague, just saying we want a circular building, it's not concrete and you usually don't get that concrete answer. So the more specific or the more clear your vision and ambition is about your project, the better the answers you will get. How do you do that? It's always good to do some benchmarking, what is possible today, what is feasible, but also within a couple of years, because a building is or takes quite a while to realize a building. So have a look abroad to the future and get an idea what might be feasible within a couple of years. And of course, if you want to challenge the market, you have to reward for effort and engagement. Another big question is, where do we have impact on? Because that's a very broad range. We often think circularity and sustainability a little bit together because it's not, you cannot really separate it. But you have a very broad range where you can realize impact. Beginning of the surrounding of a building, because a building is never ever on its own. It's always part of a context, part of a city, of a smaller environment. There might be possibilities to do some sharing facilities, build it multifunctional. Maybe there's a possibility to do energy exchange, set in on higher biodiversity within the area, etc., etc. Then you have the building itself, the yellow circle, where you might think about all the classical sustainability topics, be it energy, water, material, comfort, well-being, etc., but also the circular aspects. But then a very important aspect is also the exploitation. And that's the phase where we actually realize circular potential. That's the phase where we really see if it works, your connections, your reversible connections that you realized, because then you really need them if you want to change or adapt your building to something else. And another important question also, what do I leave behind? In the example, we'll see it's a building, it's not that old yet, but we're totally renovating it. So thinking ahead of how can this building go through a couple of changes within its lifetime is a very important question. But you see there's a very broad range where we can work on, so be clear and set your priorities, set your ambition on which topics you really want to go further. And then the main question, how do I realize the ambition? Everybody knows the tools we have within public procurement. Of course, defining the assignment, that's for us the most important part, where we put the vision, ambition, the performance requirements, priorities, etc. in it, where we really describe what we want. Then, of course, you have to select a procedure that is suited for that specific purpose. And you have the possibilities to work with selection criteria and award criteria and to evaluate what you want to evaluate. But it's really good to really think about what do I really want to evaluate and on which manner. Is it qualitative or quantitative? But that's our example now. It's the World Trade Centers in Brussels. It's very close to the North Station. You see two towers left and right of the middle centrum thing. These are the old towers, and in the middle there's a new tower or a new long thing added in between. It's now called the Belpere building. It was a competitive procedure with negotiation. We are going to lease it for 18 years. We are going to lease 70,000 square meters, but the whole building is in total 110,000 square meters. Of offices, there's a hotel, there are apartments, there are other facilities, there's leisure. I'm not talking too much about the building itself, but I put a link in the presentation to a site where you can find certain videos and texts and graphs and photos about all the different aspects of the building. What are the characteristics on circularity of that building? We put the tender in the market in 2017. So now the whole building is already selective demolished and they're already building it up again. So it's a total renovation which we're doing, and it's also getting more dense on the site itself. So the characteristics is of the old building. You see that in the graph on the top left. 2018, that is these are the World Trade Centers, the two towers with the part that is in the ground. And 2023, that is the one it's going to be. From the old building, we keep about 2/3 of the materials, which is especially all the concrete structures, because they weigh the heaviest. Everything what is in the ground is kept, and the two circulation cores. And the rest is reused or preserved or recycled. In the new building, which is much bigger and which has more mass, the new building will consist 50% of old materials, reused, recycled, or preserved, and 50% new materials. So there was a very extensive selective demolition. It's the building concept of the building itself is adaptable, so the layers can change, the floors can change in function. Now it's you have one layer of offices, and then you have a layer of housing or hotel. In future, it is possible to switch it, to adapt it. If, for example, we need more space or we need less space, it's possible to make a floor just a hotel or an apartment or an office. So the whole building is conceptuated to be able to do that. We have about 75% of renewable energy in the building. A great portion of the new materials which are added are certified, mostly cradle to cradle. And it's green concrete, which is used and which is also cradle to cradle certified. So just a few characteristics of the building. But how did we approach it? So we tried to concretize our ambition on the building, how sustainable, how accessible, how circular, etc. we would like to be. What kind of tools can we use? And we also made try to say, okay, what is really a must-have and what is a nice-to-have for us? And somewhere in between, we would like to land, but we didn't always know where. And we were looking for tools we could use and how we could put that in tender documents. So we did a lot of research and benchmarking, and we decided, okay, there are certain aspects which we were quite sure that is feasible. And we put all these feasible aspects into the minimum requirements in the tender. So you see in that list of the minimum requirements, of course, the location and something about the floor area, but also energy, accessibility, sustainability, and timing. And then there was another part where we weren't totally sure how far we could go and where we wanted to challenge the market. And these were put into the award criteria. So the classical sustainability in the sense of BREEAM, but not certified. GRO is the Flemish sustainability tool which we developed, is a minimum requirement, and the things about circularity was an award criteria. So for energy, for example, we used the minimum requirements and the award criteria to go as far as possible. So we set a minimum, and that was GRO Excellent. That is a certain level in that sustainability meter. And that level is 20% better than legislation in Brussels, which is more or less, the Brussels legislation is more or less PACIFAR standard, so they had to be 20% better anyway. The target was energy neutral, and ideally it would be energy positive. But we are here in a very urban surrounding with high-rise buildings, because you can't realize 70,000 square meters in a bungalow type in Brussels Centrum or Brussels North. So we had to study whether it was feasible to really go energy neutral in a surrounding like that. So we made some simulations, and we were also thinking about the impact of the building materials versus the energy aspect. which is considered in the LCA tool totem. So our translation to the documents was we had a minimum requirement on energy, which is 20% better than legislation. And the award criteria was the closer they got to zero energy, the more points they got, which was also included in all tender documents as a service level agreement for energy. So they had to calculate all these, and that is going to be monitored and followed up during the exploitation of the building. We tried to do the same exercise for our ambition on sustainability and circularity. We set the minimum to go better. That's like a general score we wanted to reach within within that sustainability tool. And then there are quite a lot of aspects around circularity, for example, reuse, certification, low emission materials, reversibility and demountability of the building, a closed water loop, zero waste in exploitation, etc. To somewhere 100%, which is not feasible at the moment and which nobody knows what it actually is, as a real circular building. And then we had a couple of bottlenecks in 2017 when we were thinking about it, but actually these bottlenecks are still there. There wasn't much comparability in what is feasible at that moment. So we did try to challenge the market, but we actually didn't really know how far we could get. Then there's the aspect about guarantees and certificates about the reuse of materials, and that is still a problem. It's not solved yet. So we didn't really know what we could expect. Would they try to reuse as much as possible? How would they deal with these problems? Another aspect is the wish to have a reversible building, but there's also certain performance requirements, for example, on acoustics, which totally do not go together with a circular approach. So these are just contradicting aspects where we had to take priorities for sometimes the one on one hand and sometimes on the other hand. And another aspect was, of course, the measurability of circularity, which is not that easy. So how did we translate this into the documents? We put certain minimum requirements within that. We put a certain level in Grow. We obliged them to use Totem, which is just a new instrument on the market. They are obliged to use a material passport. They are obliged to work with BIM within a certain model. And also a bill of materials at the end of the run is obliged. What we put in the award criteria are circularity and energy neutrality. On the circularity aspect, we have some qualitative and some quantitative aspects. The concept is not, you can't measure it in numbers, but you can use certain tools to make it somewhat measurable. So we were looking at the concept itself on the use of materials, reversibility, the potential after end of life. If there were certain contracts used for reuse of residual values, and in general, what the ambition is, the approach, concrete engagements and guarantees. We used for the quantitative part, the material passport as a tool. So we added actually a couple of columns with these 5 aspects that we then could evaluate or get an indication if the one offer was much better on that aspect than the other one. And these indicators were the source of the materials. So we'll say how much was preserved, reused, recycled, new. How far did they go to what, considering certification, how many materials with labels, what kind of labels and what level of certification was used. How far did they go with harmful substances within the materials? And this is considered to be stricter than the legislation which there is. We also had a look at the design for disassembly and also how much evidence they gave us. The more concrete, the better we assessed them. So within the evaluation, there's also always a big discussion maybe between qualitative and quantitative assessment. We ourselves like the qualitative assessment because it's much broader and it's much, I think more qualitative to really look at how far an offer is in line with the vision. But this is of course much easier if the vision is rather clear. If it's kind of a vague vision, yeah, it's really hard to evaluate totally different offers you might get. The quantitative part is useful for certain aspects, be it energy or water, certification, material use, or something like that. But it's not easy to compare because the data must really be comparable. We had quite some problems with comparing the energy calculations, and we even stated how that should be done in the tender documents. But still, figures are rather can be interpreted in different ways, and it might give a certain feeling of this is right, ciphers are right, but that ciphers can be easily manipulated as well. And for us, it's auxiliary mean to assess something, but we never really just rely on some quantitative evaluation. And conceptual strengths and weaknesses, an integral approach of a project is just not possible to assess in a quantitative way. Last, I would like to share some lessons learned. I think that today we have quite a lot more experience in what is feasible to make it more concrete or to know better where we could put our ambition than 4 years ago. We would even more focus on the holistic concept and approach and not just on certain aspects, because as Melody already said, you can use cradle-to-cradle materials, but if you use them in the wrong way, you don't have realized any circularity at all. So that I think should get more focus at the moment. And there's always going to be a balance between requirements and the degree of freedom for design. In our buildings, we have quite a lot of requirements. We have difficult clients. So this for us is quite a difficult balance to find. And we're trying to broaden the degree of design so we get better ideas and have less impact, but that's not always feasible for us. What worked very well in the documents in this project, the measurability of certain aspects does definitely work well, but it does not really cover the full scope of circularity. So I advise to be really aware of what you measure and how you put that in the context of the whole project. We are very glad with concrete engagements we got, because this is now during the building process very easy to follow up and really you have it black on white, you have it on paper, and it really works that you get it done. We are used to work with Grow, and that usually works well for us, so also here we don't have any problem with that. So that was in a nutshell how we approached the building the building the World Trade Centers in Brussels. I don't know if there are any questions right now, which I don't hear at the moment actually, or if we do that later.
Yes, well, we don't have time for questions, I think. We are a little bit late in the program, so we're gonna get right to the next presentation. Hopefully, let's see if we are heard by Stefano Tota. Stefano is present. Okay. Stefano, can you hear us? We cannot hear you yet.
Okay, now I can hear you, and
You can hear us?
yeah, yes.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being with us. And from NV Park, we're going to have a presentation. Please, Stefano.
Okay, thank you for invitation. I apologize for not being able to come to you, but now I would like to share my screen. Okay, let me know if it's okay for you. Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay, okay, perfect.
Can start.
Okay. So I would like to present an experience that we carry out in our region, the Piedmont region in Italy. And okay, I would like to start only with a really short presentation about my company, the company where I work now. And this environment park, that is a technology park settled in Torino. This company has been active for over 20 years in the field of our environmental innovation and sustainability. And our business are developed in two main areas. The first is the management of the technology park, and second is the innovation service. And about the technology park, we have more around 30,000 square meters of buildings and labs, where we host around 70 companies. With more than 600 people that work in this site for this company. But in other end, we are also an innovation service, and with different competence. We offer service like consultants, and we have also innovative labs. And we offer our service to private company and public administration. And we had got more than 600 consultancy contract since 2010, and 100 of which were financed by European programs. We work on different European program like the different Interreg, where we can submit proposal, and also we work on H2020 or Horizon Europe or Horizon program. And we work on different topics on energy mobility, hydrogen, green chemistry, circular economy, etc. And we work giving our competence, but also labs and demo site. And about the public procurement, we carry out some experience in different European projects. And today I would like to present the result of one of these projects that was called EcoBati. And this project was financed by an Interreg Alcotra program, that is a transborder Interreg program between Italy and France. And so the country involved in this project are only two, Italy and France, of course. And with the participation of 8 partners, mainly Chamber of Commerce, but also some technical partners like Environment Park. And also with the participation of some really small municipality, mainly in the Italian side. So the main objective of this project was to increase the number of local product with the certification about their sustainability, and also to increase the number of green public procurement carried out by the public authority in the field of the construction works. And so the project aimed to support the public authority in order to implement this innovative public procurement, and in other hand to support the company that produce this kind of product in order to certify their products. So the main idea of this project is to strengthen the local supply chain in the public construction sector. And how is it possible to do that? Our idea is to increase the number of green public procurement, use the green public procurement like a tool in order to increase the number of the number of local product with environmental certification, and also with aim to strengthen the local supply chain. And we implement 4 main actions. The first is to support the private sector, in order to verify the environmental impact of their product with carrying out the local LCA analysis, and then to support this company in order to obtain environmental certification according to the main ISO norms, and also according to APD, environmental product declaration, and for the wood product also using other kind of certification like PEFC or FCC. The second main action was to support the public authority in order to implement green public procurement, giving supporting this authority with technical assistance and legal assistance. And then we also supported the public authority realizing some tools useful for the public authority, but not only for they. And these tools were mainly 2. The first was a regional product catalog with a list of the construction product with the environmental certification that is possible to find in this local market. And then we also realized a new version of original price list that must be used by the designer in order to define the price of the works for the public buildings. Then also the last action was to implement some 4 pilot green public procurement during the project. So in Italy, we have a legislation that provides some minimum environmental criteria. Some of them are mandatory. For example, in the field of a circular economy, there is a mandatory criteria about the recycled material, and this regulation obliges the public authority to require that the content of the material recovered or recycled in the product used for the public construction must be equal to at least 15 in weight, assessed in the total of all the material used. So this is mandatory. Then this regulation gives the possibility to use other environmental criteria that are optional. One, for example, is on the quantity of renewable material, and the second is that was very important for our project, is about the supply distance of construction products. So it is this optional criteria give the possibility for the public authority to ask that the material and product used in the work in the construction work could as extracted, collected, or recovered, as well as processed at a maximum distance of 150 kilometers from the site of use, for at least 60% in weight of the total material used. So this is very important because this Italian law gives the possibility to use these criteria that according to this norm is more important than the price of the construction. And then in our project, we deliver also other award criteria that could be used in this kind of procurement. And of course, this project was an Interreg transborder project. So we deliver another criteria that is environmental criteria, of course. But would like to improve the cross-border supply. And we deliver a new criteria about that, and also another criteria about specific wood product in order to quantify the CO2 emission in atmosphere of the timber product in the transport phases, in order to increase the number of wood product, local wood product. So, as I said before, we support the local company in order to analyze the process with the life cycle analysis, and then we support these company that were selected during the project in order to obtain environmental certification. Then, so before we deliver this catalog about certificate product, environmental certificate product. And in this catalog, for each product, there is a sort of description of the product, and with also a quantification of environmental performance indicator, and that come from the result of LCA analysis, and are reported in this catalog. So this is according to us very useful for the designer, of course, if you want to found product to input in their project, but also for the construction company in order to found on the market product certificated, and also for the public authority in order to know what is possible to ask to the market. And then another action was to support the implementation of 4 pilot green public procurement for energy refurbishment works in public buildings. And as I said before, the support was technical and legal. And we support in all the phases from the designer phases. You know, we work together with the designer, with the architect and engineers, and in order to select the product certificated. And then also we work with in the tender, before the tender phases, in order to develop award criteria for a green public procurement, with the aim to select offer that include the maximum use of sustainable and recycled material. And we develop for this some objective and quantitative, easily verifiable criteria for 5 criteria maximum for green public procurement for tender. And we develop also an Excel file that we can use like a tool in order to facilitate the company to define their technical offer, and also for the public authority in order to verify and quantify the technical offer. And also we support other public authority that aren't partner in the project but was involved in the project during this time, in order to replicate this experience in other green public procurement procedure. So, for example, this is an example of the criteria that our criteria that was used in one of these pilot. And for example, in the Chamber of Commerce of Cuneo, that was the lead partner of the project, they deliver a green public procurement for the energy refurbishment of their buildings called Tetto Sottile. And we use for this tender 4 award criteria, the criteria of about the local material that must be extracted, collected, recovered, and processed at maximum distance of 150 kilometers from the site. Then we use also the cross-border supply chain criteria, and also another criteria about specific for the wood product in order to quantify the CO2 emission during the transport phases. And the last criteria was about the recycled material in order to improve the minimum percentage required by the Italian norms. The result of this tender was that the works were realized with 90% of local construction products, and so thanks to this we obtained that there was a great reduction of CO2 emission during the transport phases. And also this criteria was maximized also for the wood products, that all the wood products come from a very short distance from the site. And in other hands, with some of these sustainable criteria are in competition one with against other. And so we maximize the use of local products, but we don't obtain really relevant result about recycled material that was the minimum, so 15%, and no transborder product was used were used in this project. So about lesson learned was that these kind of public procurement are useful in order to promote the local supply chains, and the use of minimum environmental criteria must to take place at all stage, from the design to the procurement and to the execution works. And the necessary to support the authority, public authority, contracting authority, in order to implement these criteria during the tender phases. And also is necessary to support the manufacturing company in order to analyze the process and in order to obtain this environmental certification label. And also it's necessary to support also in our territory also the designer, the professional, in order to identify sustainable and certified products with tool and documents. Okay, thank you for attention. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Stefano. Very nice presentation, very instructive. A lot of examples of how circularity can be used. So I don't know if you have very quick questions. If not, we can move on to the other presentation. Anne Goids. I don't know if I pronounce it right. Do you hear us?
Yeah, it's Anne Watts, but it's not
yes.
difficult in other language.
Thank you very much for being with us today. Looking forward to your insights on circularity. Please.
I suppose that you can see my screen now.
Yes. You can see the
Can
presentation.
you now see the presentation? Not the. You see one image. Yeah. Okay. Very good. So I'm working for Camp C, and we are building a circular office building, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So a little bit about Camp C. Camp C is a part of the province of Antwerp in Belgium. We are the center of innovation and for sustainable construction. And our mission is to accelerate the transition to a sustainable society. For, as I said, our focus is on the construction sector. And we want to go from thinking to doing. So we are not a research institution. We are, yeah, I think we are a little bit different. One thing is we have different target groups. Local government, citizens. We work also on education, but rather for on a not on a university level, and for the businesses in the province of Antwerp and further. Yeah, and what's really important is that we, if I say thinking by doing, that we are doing it instead of what we are also thinking, but then we also want to do things. We are trying to do experiments. We try to try out innovative things to trigger local governments, but also the construction sector to do it differently and to not keep on doing things traditionally. And building circular is one of the ways to get to this sustainable society and so we hope that we can inspire a lot of people. That's also something very important for us. So at a certain moment, some years ago, we decided we are going to show that circular building is really possible and what we can do with it, and we will show it at our site. On our site at Camp C, that's in Westerlo, that's in Belgium, yeah, of course. We have a very big site with a lot of experimental buildings, and here we will build, or we are building at this moment, a circular building, and we call it Centrum. So that is the center. When we started with this, we thought, okay, circular building, what's in it? What's it? Because it's like a buzzword, and some things that are in it already existed a long time ago before we were talking about circular building. So we decided, we checked what's in it, and we divided all the things that were in it in 7 pillars. That's the circular area development, circular design, circular financing, working in a circular way, circular materials, circular business models, and circular procurement. And today, I'm asked to focus on the circular procurement, but I will also try to show you a little bit on what we have done with circular design, circular materials, and the circular business models, because as we are building it, there are a lot of nice stuff, also really things that are done and that we can show you, and that are certainly very inspiring too. So circular procurement, what's it? In a nutshell, a package of openly formulated ambitions with a fixed budget challenges the market to form building consortiums and to come up with innovative building solutions themselves. So that's what we did. That's how we see it. Fixed budget, trying to make collaboration, trying to challenge people to make other collaborations and to collaborate a lot with other parties, other actors in the building sector, and looking for innovation. And this is the process that we run through. So we started with setting our ambitions. Then we did a phase of market engagements, a selection phase, a dialogue phase, and an award phase. And so the last 3 phases are part of the competitive dialogue procedure. So we followed a procedure that's legal, so it's all yeah, it's all it's innovative, but it's following the rules. But we try to look how can we do this in a very innovative way in between the lines that are fixed. And as you can see here, of course, we started with a lot of participants, and at the end we ended with just one consortium. So it's like a funnel. First step was setting ambitions. It's very important, I think. It's also a way for in your organization to make sure that the minds are in the same way and that everyone is thinking the same, and also afterwards that you can go back to that document with your ambition and try and check very quickly, are we still doing what we decided to do? So we made a vision document. This is it. It's not more than that. Just to make clear what we wanted, and because it's in Dutch, just some more explanation. So there were 4 general ambitions. The future-proofed sustainability as circularity. So that means that we want to show that the building has to show that the transition from traditional to circular is really the future, and it has to be a prominent example of a circular building. Another ambition was a future-proof sustainability in looking to flexibility, and it means that the building should be able to respond to changing spatial and functional needs. So it should be adaptable. And then another ambition was the responsive sustainability, the health and well-being. For us, it was really important that the building was a healthy and comfortable environment, because yeah, that's also important to convince people to do it more. When you can show it's really healthy, it's comfortable, people like to work there. That's also important to make the story. And then that goes together with the last one. The ambition was the image. So we wanted a building where we could show really a showcase, not only in what it's in it, but also in how it presents, and that we can talk about it, that people talk about it, and that we can spread the word and disseminate the experience we had and inspire in this way other people. So that was very important for us. And then we thought, okay, but we have one problem, because at that moment people were talking about circular building. I think even at this moment it's not known as good in the construction sector. It's not that everyone is working with this. It's not that all local governments are asking this. So we thought it's very important that we start with informing the market. And we organized master classes. And the reason was to inform people, but also to make it possible that people could find each other, that they could already make some new collaboration. So because that was also really important for the rest of our process. There was a great success, as you can see. And then we came to the selection phase. At that moment, the consortia had to deliver a paper of 2,000 words, and and with some references, and of course some other official documents. And the consortia just have to present themselves, of course. And the goal was, yeah, we will have a building with a long-term engagement. So it will be a design, build, maintain, and energy contract. So DBME, a contract for 20 years. So not only the building, but also the maintenance and the energy afterwards. And we want a building consortium. It's for us very important that you really work together, and that we have the input of the different actors, and not only one actor or the classical process that it's the architects who decide and then the contractor is coming afterwards, but really working together from the beginning. And then we had, I think we had 7 consortia that we were very surprised to have a lot of people that were interested, organizations, I think more than 50. And we could select 3 ambitions consortia, and for that we used a selection guide. And then came the second phase, the dialogue phase. So those 3 consortia could go into the dialogue phase. Just a sketch to show you what it was about. So we yeah, I'm just going to explain. I think you can read it. We didn't to compare. It's like if you would ask a taxi chauffeur, you can ask him, get me to the airport quickly, just go. Then and you can suggest, you can think that the taxi chauffeur, the taxi driver is and knows a lot about it, is the expert, so he will know how he should go there. Or you can go to a taxi driver and explain him from the beginning to the end how he should drive to the airport. That's the difference. So what we did is we said what we want, we said what our ambitions were, we stated what we really wanted to have in it, but we didn't say how they should do it. But that's, of course, that's not so easy to respond for them. So those dialogue phases were very important. First, to make it more clear for them what we need, and on the other hand also to make what we asked also very realistic, because we changed it during the process. We changed our specifications during those dialogue phase, just to make sure that it's really they really can make it, and that made this very interesting. So what we asked was 1,000 square meters of office space. Now, later on, so one of the things we changed was that at the end, we said, yeah, we will change that to 100 workspaces, because what we asked was a little bit too much for the money we gave. There were extra possibilities, so they could take other extra square meters. That's also what the consortia that's building now did. And then, very important, there was a fixed price for the capex and the opex. So that means that for building the building, there was 1 million euros. There is 1 million euros, and for the maintaining and energy afterwards is also 1 million euros. So very important that it's not about the money here. It's really about how are you going to do this, and how can we then present something that's really circular, that's really that's everything what we ask for. So that's what I just said. So we had then 2 structured dialogue rounds with 3 consortia. So that means that you put them, they have a moment, I think it was 2 hours. They can come, they can ask questions, they can show things, they can do a workshop. We cannot, like, we had a legal advisor with us, because it was very important that we didn't evaluate at that moment or show that what we thought was better or less, but it was really about the content, about what we asked for. And if they asked questions, they had to do it officially, and the answers went to all the other consortia too. So you can imagine, if you do that 2 times for each consortia, it's really time consuming. That's also why one of the consortia has, after the first dialogue round, decided to finish the procedure, because they thought it was too time consuming for too much effort for the chance they had to win it. And then, well, as I said just some slides ago, so there were changes on the award document, on the selections. The criteria were changed a little bit based on the dialogue. So it's just at the end of the dialogue phases that we published the final document for the selection. And then they had to, of course, they had to deliver a document, and we went to the award phase. For the awarding, the criteria was not price this time. So that was really because we wanted to show you can really do something else than awarding only on price. So that was 40% of the points were on the design. It should be in line with the ambitions, and it should be an image and everything. Let's 40% on circularity and 20% on the process. It's also on the collaboration. How are you going to work together? How are you going to follow up the project? Because we thought that was also very important. And then just to show you on the circularity criteria, we asked performance statements. So for the raw materials, for consumption and emission, for image and process, for health and use, for finance, flexibility and mobility. And here you can see one of those things that's cut out of our document. So we asked to make a performance statement. What are you going to deliver on this topic, for example, rainwater use? And then also, how are you going to make sure that you will deliver it? How are you going to check it, that it's okay? And that was really interesting because then it was also very important, and it was very good because at that moment you could really compare very good the different consortia. For us, this was really important to see how far will they go, and I think it was not so easy for them to answer to these questions. But it's really important for the rest of the project to go back to this document and to see if we are really doing what they said they would do. And so at the awarding was to the most ambitious consortium, of course, and it was Camp Circulaire. With these partners, Beneens, Muurtuin, Vito, Strength, Tenergia, West Architecture, and TEN. And there were, these are all different. So there's an architect, a contractor, a consultancy, an engineer. So very different companies that really work together. It was really also a reason why they have won the consortium. The award. We got a prize for this procurement process, the Procura Plus award. So we are very lucky with this. And already in June, we planted the maypole because the building, well, the structure of the building was finished. So you can see that it's a CLT structure. And of course, we're really happy. The building is really being built very quickly, and we hope to finish it by March 2022. So it will. I hope that after the next wave of COVID, that you can all come to visit the finished building. Then something small. I didn't check my time, I should say, but I will say something small about the circular design. So also that's also, of course, very important. So designing building elements in such a way that the building is dynamic, changeable, remountable, and modular, and functions as a temporary storage of materials. What's really important is that this consortia was very concentrated on the mountability. So it's a structure that you can take out, you can take everything, you can dismantle the construction, the structure, and build it again somewhere else. And it's really for everything. So also for the foundations and for everything is really dismountable. I think that's because you always have to choose a little bit. I think that's really very characteristic of our building, also very interesting as an example. So it's designed on a grid of 5 meters to 5 meters to make sure that everything is reusable. The grid is really is kept everywhere. It's not changed. There is no difference. So then all the beams are from the same are the same are also 5 meters. And it's very flexible, and you can very easily remove or change things. And what's also important is you can see here a BIM model. So we have all the parts in the BIM model, and we will make a material bank from it. We are now also working on which elements, characteristics should we put in this BIM model, in this components, to make sure that we can reuse it afterwards, and also to make it workable for just contractor, that it's more efficient, that it's interesting to do the effort, because sometimes it goes very far and it's not workable anymore. And just to show you that we also built some models just to show that to try it out to see if it's possible. So these are the junctions of the wooden structure, and here you can see the connection with the foundation. This is in the building phase in the beginning. So yeah, it's like a mechano, you put it together. It was really nice to see a very clean building place also. So there the beams are put on this. The connections are really developed for this project and are reused, of course, at this moment for other projects too. So the beams are going into here, and then you have 2 pins that block it, and it's very, very easy. I'll just show you some other pictures. So this is the UNO-1 system that can be also easily changed in the buildings. Here you can see what we do with the electricity cables. So we made we made sure that there was room in the floor plates to make sure that the electricity cables can run through it, to make sure that because afterwards, if you want to, we didn't want to use something that would glue to the floor or something. So then you need to put the electricity cable somewhere without using a layer. I forgot the word in English, but in Dutch it's a schap. But so that's the way we did it. And the other way the electricity cables are running is here around the floor. So then there you can see how the techniques, the heating, the cooling, the ventilation is all in the ceiling, and we will also keep these ceilings open so that you can see it, and because it's nice to see too. And what you can also see here, the holes in the beams. So the holes are also fixed. We have really 2 kinds of holes in the beams, and each beam is one type of holes. So to make sure that each beam is the same. And at this point here, I remember that we had a little problem that we had to solve. So I think here we had to still change, but so it's sometimes we are lucky and it works very well. Sometimes we still have to think about solutions, of course, during the building, but that's also a part of the experiment. Another thing that we worked on really hard is circular materials that are renewable, reusable, recyclable, or upcyclable, and that are used pure for as long that they remain in the cycle, and that they remain in the cycle as long as possible. What we did was we looked for circular materials and the detachable version. Of course, we had to see what was available. That's really a problem at this moment in the building sector. So sometimes we had to choose something that was not our first choice at the end. There is a lot of room for experiment in the use of materials. We also asked that as a government, and what we find really important is the story behind the materials. Because the building will also have an expo function, and it's really important that people can visit the building and then hear the story about the materials, about the building, and that it's really something that is interesting for everyone. That also someone who is not like just a citizen can come there, hear the story, and be inspired. Not only the experts in the construction sector. So yeah, one of the materials we used was the concrete without cement. So that's a concrete that is developed in another project that we are working on as you can see. That's Urbcon, and here you can see, this is the live mock-up, and here you can see how it's made. It's just very, very simple. Huh? It's just asking to a company that's used to make prefab concrete to use another mix. That's everything. It's really easy. I would say really easy. Yeah, you wouldn't even think that it's so easy. And those were these were put in the construction this way. and they can be taken out too. And then here we made some other mock-ups too. Sometimes we did the things we made, sometimes we changed it. I will not go into detail about that now. And here you can see how we put how the foundations are put in place. So there are some holes here, and you can take them out very easy and put them somewhere else if it's necessary. So and then this picture is really interesting because we have on the ground floor, we have an insulation layer of 60 centimeters of shells. Shells that are a rest product from the dredging of the Schelde. That's a river very important river in Belgium near Antwerp that runs to the port of Antwerp. And so these shells are used, so you can see here the shells still laying, but now you cannot see them anymore because on top of it we put a shop of that's without cement. So that's really an experiment because it's not certificated yet. So it's there is no cement in it. We want no cement in the building. I suppose that was already clear. And you can afterwards, you can by putting it in water, it can it can be removed again. So it's not fixed. You can remove it. Of course, it's not the same as putting things one layer on the other. But we wanted to try this here because otherwise we had to. This way, we could also use a decent finishing for the floor, and there we need a decent floor, and that's why we use this, and also because it's very experimental, and it was really difficult to put it there and to make it really flat because of the way the mixture is, but now it looks really nice. So that's how it looks now. This is a very recent picture of our offices. This is one of the things we did with on the floors, and that's one of the things we had to change because the insulation was not dense enough, and you were like dancing on the floor a little bit. Those are 2 Fermacell layers on top of it, but still then it was not very stable. So we changed that to another product, and we're still waiting. No, I think it's just delivered. This is the exterior.
And
also,
if I, sorry to interrupt, we're
finished.
running out of time. We need some, a little bit of time for questions. If you can wrap it up, so we take.
Finished. Excuse me. So just the circular business models, I wanted to say that we looked for a lot of things, but we just ended by heating and cooling as a circular business model because it's new and for the finances as well as the companies are not yet ready for it. And then what I want to finish with is that this quote. So because the greatest part of a road trip isn't arriving at your destination, but it's all the wild stuff that happened along the way. That's the reason why Campus is doing it, just to learn, and we want to disseminate a lot about what we are learning here, like to you, and you're all very welcome. That was it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. Down to earth, so to speak. Practical examples. So we have 10 more minutes for questions and answers from the presenters. So please shoot. Anybody? Yeah? Awesome. Yes, please. You can come here so we hear you.
Hi, Annie, can you hear me?
Stop sharing.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. Yeah.
Thanks for your presentation. I was wondering, did you use life cycle costing to analyze the different design variables that you assessed from the different contractors, let's say?
We didn't. No, we didn't went that far. At this, we are doing a life cycle analysis. Well, the University of Liège is doing it for us, but it was very. I should say that it was very intuitive. So we tried to compare the things that they gave us, but we didn't really make a calculation on things that were given to us.
Okay,
Is that
can
an
I ask a
answer?
follow-up question? And then the let's say the study period that you assessed the different variants on, was it on the typical, let's say, 60 years of study period for buildings, or did you expand the study period where you saw the end of life scenarios for the different building components, and how these building components can actually be reused in other buildings, and if they can even be reused technically, let's say?
Yeah, I'm not really into the LCA study because it's not finished yet. I think you're referring to that. I think that it's important to know that a lot of things that we are doing is really experimental, that we don't always can give you the numbers to show that it's really possible. We will see. So we really want to also deconstruct this building and then construct another one again. And at this moment, we will certainly also experience a lot of things and learn a lot of things. And so it's what we as Camp C want to do with this. So there are some studies running on it, but for us, it's really important to really do it and try it out. And I can imagine that it's a different way as a university is thinking, of course. Is that an
If
answer?
no one else, I can ask also. So I was going to ask about the master classes you gave to contractors before you offered the tender. What content did it have, and how do you think it affected the procurement process?
The content was, yeah, like Thomas Rauw came speaking for the first one. That was very general. And then we followed our pillars. So on procurement, on design, on materials. So and there were some presentations, but there were also workshops in it. So yeah, and it was not only for contractors, everyone was welcome. So also architects, also governments, other organizations, because it's important that you have like a network and that people can also outside the consortium can work together, and that other people are also asking the same. If another government is also asking a circular building, of course, there will be a bigger demand side, and then the supply side, the contractors will also do more effort or be more interested, I think.
I wanted to make a question to Almut, because I think that your presentation was super interesting for my research project. I'm not sure that is gonna be a question or a comment, but is that what you showed is very, I mean, it would, at least me that I'm very interested in this topic, would desire for the construction sector. Like an expert like you, I've seen that you are also an architect in your previous experience before being a consultant for the government. And I don't know, this explains to me that we really need somebody with an expertise like yours. Like you studied in university materials, you studied these things. And so what do you think in this regard? Because to employ a person like you is a cost for governments. And sometimes what they usually talk about is that the main issue with sustainability is that is increasing costs. But do you think that at the end of the day, although, let's say, the increased cost of employment, this is repaid by your expertise in terms of how the contract is drafted and the consequences, the positive consequences on the environment?
Maybe that's not so easy to answer, but I think it will be depending on the ambition of the employer.
because if the employer does have the ambition, he has to have some kind of knowledge. He might hire that in a person who works for him, or he might hire a lot of other external consultants, which cost a lot more. So I think in the long run, I think you cannot get around this cost anymore, because the biggest problem is knowledge all over, and especially with the governments and the small governments, the local governments. As long as there's no knowledge, you're not going to get more and more projects with higher ambitions on circularity and sustainability, because they don't know how to put it in a tender. So I think it shouldn't be a question actually to have these kind of people, but that's one of the biggest problem at the moment in Belgium, and I think that's probably the same in other countries as well. To get the knowledge to the clients who start with the project, and so they know what they're doing, and they would create the most impact, I think. But that's a big problem, and I think it would pay back, because even if you just if you can because you question your whole project, and you might save 100 square meters to build, that's a gigantic impact, and that costs quite a lot. A square meter is 2,500 euros by now, at least, all costs included. So you can easily spend that money on something else.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your enlightening presentations. I'm Laura. I'm studying human rights integration in public procurement, and I think I've been hearing a lot the word sustainability, and I think it's pretty clear how circular economy or circular procurement can have an impact in environment. But I just wonder whether you see any room for the social or the human rights, or what could be the positive impacts of circular procurement and circular construction in people. Thank you.
So who wants to take the first one? Yeah. Okay, Melody.
Yes, okay, thank you. I'm sure Almut and Anna also have an idea on this, but I would like to go first. I think this is really important, and we have these semantic discussions whether sustainability is circularity or not. And for me personally, circularity is a way to achieve sustainability, and I think social aspects are a really important part of this. And for instance, when we're looking at the supply chain, we can also see that there are human rights violations. And when we're looking at these criteria, we can also act on due diligence and take into account these criteria. So for me personally, these aren't two different things. We have to take both into account. And also, if we're looking at LCC, we're looking at the cost for the environment, but we're also looking at the cost for society. So I'm really happy that you made this comment, because I think also thinking back to what Dr. Anders Voerder said about the definition and the evolution of the term circularity, I think this should become a really important part of it.
I totally agree with Melody. And I think some of these clauses, these legal clauses, are included in our tender documents anyway, but you still can even realize more impact by working together with certain organizations who just work for these kind of people. So you can use them for certain kind of works, or you can look around if you can create some kind of added value within your neighborhood with that building of that project you're realizing there. Maybe then you can use other rooms, or you can implement, or they're working in the building, or there are numerous ways to work on that even strong. But I think it's sure that is one of the parts which gets a little bit less importance right now. Attention, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you for a very interesting session. A lot of challenging presentations. Now our PhDs have a lot to think about, but I think also they have a lot of examples to develop their own research questions and to try to fit this knowledge into their research on specific topics that they are tackling. So thank you very much to all of you, and I think we're gonna have not a short break. We just go directly to the administrative meeting. Yes. Okay. Thank you all for participating.
Bye bye.